Hi, my name's Steve Story and welcome to my 2020 Knolly Fugitive LT bike check. The Knolly Fugitive is an all-mountain bike that's 150 millimeters of travel up front and 135 millimeters in the rear. The regular version is 120 in the rear and 140 up front. The Knolly Fugitive is a really versatile bike. It's much more capable than the numbers would have you believe. I've ridden this bike everywhere. I've taken it all around the world with me in all sorts of different riding conditions. I've happily ridden it down the Lausa World Cup DH track where I had a hell of a time and I didn't regret having a bigger bike or anything like that. And it feels just as home on multi-day epics through the Chilcotin. What I really love about this bike, beyond the versatility, is how well it corners and how fast it is. No matter what you do on this bike, it just seems to want to go faster and faster. As soon as you pump things, it just feels like a rocket ship, and then it holds traction really well through corners, and then it feels like you come out even faster out of them without even trying hard. These characteristics make for an extremely fun ride, and I've arguably had some of my favorite and most fun moments on this bike. Now let's look at some of the key features that make a Knolly unique. First and foremost is their 4x4 suspension platform, which is patented, so yeah, it's totally unique to them. Their design has allowed them to tune the wheel path and the progression independently of each other. I have a link at the bottom that you can click on. It will take you to a page that will explain it much better than I ever could. It's well beyond the way I can explain things, but I can tell you that it makes for an amazing ride. Like, the traction is superior. You really need to ride one and you'll kind of get what I'm saying, but yeah, head to that link if you want to learn more about that. They also use a 157 hub spacing at the back. They call it 157 trail. Now this is a 29er, but because of that 157 trail, it allowed them to get a lot more clearance out of their tires. You may think there's drawbacks to that, like maybe the hubs, like the back end is wider, but it's only added a 1.5 mils on each side. So you've barely lost any clearance and you've gained all of what I've just mentioned, plus now the wheel is a lot more stiff laterally, so you get a better ride, and that's one of the reasons why it corners so well. The last thing I want to point out is the continuous seat post. I really enjoy having the option of putting in longer seat posts. I'm 5'9", but for whatever reason, my riding style, when I'm hitting jumps, I like to have the seat way out of the way, which requires approximately 190 millimeters of drop for me. Currently I have a 175 on there. On the Warden, I do run a 200, so with either of those options, I can slam the seat all the way down and there's still plenty of room. I think there's a 280 millimeters of insertion depth. So yeah, lots of options you can go with. I'm running Fox suspension front and back on the Fugitive. I've got the Fox Factory 36 with 150 millimeters of travel up front, and I'm running the DPX2 in the back. Now, some people have run up 160 on the front. I've tried that. I like it better with 150, so it's a bit snappier. And then in the back, the reason I picked the DPX2 is I really like the lockout on this. It's a lot more firmer than the X2. You're giving up a little bit of descending capability with it, but this DPX2 holds its own, like, completely. Now for sag, I generally run about 18% up front and approximately 28 to 30% in the back. I've included my suspension settings in the description below. I'm going to put a set for summer and winter. Now, the reason for doing this is our temperatures change wildly here, as you can see. Summer will be upwards of 30 degrees, and then winter, obviously, we're sitting around 0, just above 0 sort of thing. And your suspension settings will change quite a bit. Like, I may remove the volume spacer up front, and then you also have to decrease the dampening of the rebound and the compression. Let's go through some of the components I have on my bike. I have a bunch of OneUp Components parts on here. I am running the cockpit from them, which is their stem and carbon bar. Now, their carbon bar is really unique. It's got kind of a crazy shape to it. What it's done is it made the bar stiff laterally, but compliant vertically. So it's a bit of a softer ride, not too harsh like some carbon bars are. It's also made it extremely light and extremely strong. It's a great setup. I'm a big fan of it. I run the 35 mil rise bar, and I have approximately 17 mils of spacers underneath it right now. For me, I just like it a little higher because the Knolly Fugitive is a bit lower than most bikes, for a 29er especially. Also from OneUp, I'm running their bash guard. which is super simple, nice and strong, does everything it should, doesn't look too chunky or anything. But one of my favorite parts from OneUp is their EDC tool, which fits inside the head tube of the fork. Now that tool has a lot in it. It looks small, but inside it you've got Allen keys up to 8 millimeters, Torx, you have a chain breaker, there is a headset tightening tool. You also have a little stash case at the bottom of it. You can use it for a few different things. I use it for a tire plug, so there's a tire plug in there, some plugs, and it also fits a little pair of pliers that helps you disconnect the power link and the SRAM chain if you ever need to do that. But you can also put CO2 in there, anything else you really want. It's quite the amazing tool. It's actually one of my favorite mountain bike innovations since the dropper post. The next parts I want to talk about on my bike are the wheels. Now the wheels, I absolutely love them. They are from Are One Composites, which is based in Kamloops, BC. I am running their Union wheels, which is 30 millimeter width interior diameter. They do everything in-house there, absolutely everything. They design them there, they create the molds there, they lay them up there, they build the wheels there. All done locally. They even source their carbon from within North America. Now what makes that advantageous to them is they don't have to wait like a year to redesign stuff since they're able to do it on the fly there. So they're able to even tune these rims with different characteristics, which you couldn't do in an aluminum rim normally. Another great aspect of them is their warranty. They are guaranteed for life. I've been on them for over 4 years. I've never had any issues with them. In fact, I've gotten more longevity out of my carbon rims than I've gotten out of any aluminum rims previous. I run these tubeless, no tube inserts. I've never actually burped them over the last few years, and that's another plus I like about the carbon. There's no deforming, so you don't run any risk about bad tire interface or anything like that. I really can't say enough good thing about that company. Have a look for them. Their link is in the description, but they make fantastic wheels and they make them at a great price point too. Now for tires, I'm running Maxxis. I've got a Minion DHF up front in a 3C Max Terra in a 2.3 width EXO casing. In the back, I'm running a Minion DHR2 dual compound in a 2.3 and also in an EXO casing. This is my winter setup. Now in summer, the only thing I would change is the back tire. I usually go to an aggressor. I would also change it to a double down most likely because I'm doing a lot more rocky descents, bigger days sort of thing. So just for that extra little protection with not too much of a weight penalty. The reason I go with a 2.3 on front and back of this bike instead of a 2.5 or 2.4 wide trail is I like to keep the bike a little faster rolling and feeling like it's on rails. I don't really like tire roll so much, which is also why I run a little more PSI than maybe some people would. I have 25 up front and 30 in the back. Any less than that, I start to get a lot of tire roll and it kind of bugs me. I'd rather the bike feel fast and don't mind a little roost or drift here and there. Now to just go over the last few parts of the bike. For the drivetrain, I'm running a SRAM X0. It's the 12-speed with a 52 sprocket in the back. I also have the carbon cranks. The reason for that is just to keep the bike a little lighter. I run the 175mm cranks. The bike is spec'd with 170, but I've decided to go with 175 just to keep the pedaling a little easier because I do a lot of big days on this bike. For the chainring size, I use a 30 tooth. It's the OneUp Switch Chainring. What's really unique about this is it allows you to change the chainring without taking the sprocket off. It's a great design. I'd highly recommend that. It makes it possible to switch back and forth between chainrings if you want to for certain types of riding. I know it might be a turnoff for some to take the cranks off and do that, but OneUp has made that a much easier process. For brakes, I'm running the codes. That's kind of my go-to brake. I like the power they have, they're predictable, and I really like the feel of the lever. I've tried other brakes, I mean, there's lots of good ones out there, but I just never liked the lever, and I guess if you don't like the lever, you're probably not gonna like the brakes at all. The codes, they're the RC, so they're very adjustable, reliable, good power, they never let me down. And that brings us to the end of my 2020 Knolly Fugitive LT bike check. Now, if you guys have any questions or any feedback you want to leave me, feel free to do so in the comments. I'll reply to everything that I get there. In the description, like I mentioned before, I'll also be writing down all the settings I have for this bike. So that will include like suspension settings, tire pressure, stem spacers, pretty much everything I can will be included below there. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I had a great time making this video, and I hope to see all of you out on the trails sometime this year. Cheers.